Hello and welcome to another TLDR EU video. To say that the idea of a European army is a contentious one would be to put things mildly. Many people are firmly against the idea, arguing that it's an irreversible step towards a United States of Europe. Others see an armed military force as necessary to protect the continent. And while we've discussed the idea of a fully fledged European army before on the channel, there is a little known European force that's slowly but surely growing in size: Frontex. So in this video we'll take a look at what Frontex is, why it's expanding, and what the future could hold. Before we start, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and ring the bell to be notified every time we release a new video. Also, if you want more news updates from us, then check out the Daily Briefing, where we offer a short summary of the day's biggest news stories. You can find the video version on the TLDR Daily YouTube channel, that's linked below. You can listen to the podcast by searching in your favourite podcast app, or read the newsletter by signing up down below. Thank you so much for your support. First things first, what actually is Frontex? Frontex, also known as the European Border and Coast Guard Agency, is, as their extended name suggests, the EU's border force. Formally, Frontex has three core objectives: planning and maintaining border and coast guard capabilities, guaranteeing safe, secure and well-functioning EU borders, as well as reducing the vulnerability of the EU's external border. All of these functions are particularly significant in the light of the Schengen area. As we've covered on the channel time and time again, the Schengen area is the bit of Europe without internal border checks, which allows people to travel without passports or border controls between the southerly tip of Portugal to the northern reaches of Sweden. The argument being from the EU side that if you loosen internal checks, you ought to boost the external ones. So in 2004, Frontex was created. On land, Frontex's role is primarily to reinforce and support national border forces, helping to ensure that everyone's on the same page when it comes to protecting the EU's external borders, and making sure that the same checks are being applied at passport controls all across the EU's external border. Frontex has, however, gone further than this initial aim though, doing more than simply reinforcing and supporting. Recently, it's extended its reach to so-called pre-frontier areas. These are the areas from which migrant flows originate, with them attempting to tackle migration at its source, in countries such as Albania, Montenegro, Turkey and Serbia, none of which are in the EU. Frontex's personnel are also the only personnel situated at the EU's external border in Gibraltar. The external airport and port are now monitored and patrolled by the European Border and Coast Guard Agency, with no Spanish personnel involvement. After a 4-year implementation period, Spain's Civil Guard may return, though details of exactly what happens after the implementation period are sketchy. So it seems that Frontex are going further than just supporting, expanding outside of the EU's territory and sometimes leading the way and guarding alone. Because of this, Frontex has unsurprisingly seen its budget skyrocket in recent years. In 2014, just under €100 million was spent on the EU's border force. By 2017, this had jumped to €280 million, and in 2020, the budget stands just shy of €400 million. Going forward, under the EU's next multi-annual financial framework, the EU will spend €5.6 billion over a 7-year period, or around €800 million a year. For some context, the European Union Agency for Law Enforcement Cooperation, better known as Europol, in 2020 had a budget in the region of just €150 million. Frontex is now able to directly recruit its own guards and buy equipment, a change from the practice of borrowing people and equipment from individual European member states. Something that itself has been highlighted as a long-term issue when it comes to Europe's forces. Rather than pooling resources and people from national forces, Frontex is cutting out the middleman, which may potentially give rise to fewer and fewer people applying to their own national forces, potentially leaving them woefully understaffed. On the 11th of January, Frontex proudly announced this new move, writing in a tweet that for the first time, the European Union has its own uniformed service, the European Border and Coast Guard Standing Corps. And here's a sneak peek of the uniform they'll be wearing to represent the EU at its borders. This new corps was actually a measure agreed at the height of the 2015-2016 EU migrant crisis, where leaders agreed to give the agency a new expanded mandate, leading to the creation of 10,000 new posts. Thanks to this, and with their increased budget, Frontex has already increased their reach. In 2020, Frontex awarded a €50 million contract to the defence arm of Airbus and Israel Aerospace Industries to operate maritime aerial surveillance with remotely guided Airbus systems, or in plain speak, surveillance drones to operate in Greece, Italy or Malta. Airbus was clear, however, to stress that these drones would not be capable of carrying weapons. A further €50 million contract was awarded to a separate private Israeli weapons manufacturer for identical services. These drones will, according to the Guardian newspaper, be used to spot refugees and migrants attempting to cross the Mediterranean to cross into Europe, a move that's been condemned by some as a way of allowing them to dispose of rescuing people. That's because under both EU and international law, naval patrols are obligated to assist vessels in distress. The Observer therefore argues that the switch to drones is part of an apparent effort to monitor the Mediterranean without being pulled into rescue missions that deliver migrants to European shores. By the way, if you want to find out more about the paths that migrants are currently taking into the EU, then you should check out our video on the topic. It's linked down below. Regardless, this isn't the first or last time that Frontex has come under scrutiny. In a series of documents obtained by a German pro-transparency group and subsequently shared with the EU Observer, Frontex appears to be complicit in the possible illegal pushback of migrant boats. Several of the serious incident reports are categorised as Category 4 incidents or situations. Situations of alleged violations of fundamental rights or international protection obligations. One specific incident highlighted in the reports shows a Swedish Frontex officer reportedly finding a rubber boat off a Greek island carrying 20 migrants. Soon, the Hellenic Coast Guard approached the rubber boat, telling the Frontex delegation to leave the scene. They did so, but continued to track the incident on their radars. The Frontex officer then goes on to say that they tracked the Hellenic Coast Guard boat slowly moving towards the Turkish borderline, something explicitly prohibited under Article 4 of Section 4 of the European Convention on Human Rights, which simply states that the collective expulsion of aliens is prohibited. A further internal report from Frontex, and seen by Politico, highlights a number of deficiency and calls for a new culture at the agency. The report allegedly looked at 13 allegations of illegal pushbacks. On 6 of these allegations, the report states that it's not been possible to completely resolve the incidents beyond all reasonable doubt, but many think this report really suggests a need for change in the agency. Going forward, Frontex will also be crucially responsible for the European Travel Information Authorization System, Europe's answer to the American ESTA. Set to be operational by the end of 2022, non-EU nationals will be required to apply for travel authorization through the ETIAS system prior to their trip. The system will, like its American counterpart, conduct a series of checks on the traveller against the EU security and border databases. Frontex has already started recruiting over 200 staff for the ETIAS central unit, with employment contracts set to start in May of this year. So this already controversial and quickly expanding agency is set to grow yet further. As it does, yet more complaints and allegations are likely to emerge about how Frontex acts across the continent, but more specifically at the EU's external border, sparking questions the Union will be forced to tackle in the years ahead. But what do you think? Is Frontex the start of a fully fledged European army? Or is it simply a bare necessity, protecting Europe's external borders? As always, let us know what you think in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a new video. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make videos like this one possible. And if you want to see your name at the end of videos, then you too can back us on Patreon. The link to that's in the description.